Live, local, social, it's the Splash Live on Civic Center TV. Welcome, friends and neighbors. I'm Tyler Kieft. Thank you for joining us on today's edition of the program. Plenty to go over, plenty to talk about with experts across the greater West Bloomfield community and beyond. Let's begin close to home in West Bloomfield, where homeowners are being warned about potential scams targeting their property taxes. Jake Schaff has more on that story from in West Bloomfield Township.
Recently in Greater West Bloomfield, residents have been made aware of a property tax scam that's AI generated and asking residents to fill out a form that does not exist. The assessing department with West Bloomfield Township has been working hard with residents to help them identify what information is correct. And I recently spoke with assessor Robert Scripture, who provided some key information on what local residents should be on the lookout for.
The scam seems to show up in different forms. We received quite a few calls last week and the week prior to. The common theme for the scam is to have the person that's, interested in receiving a tax break, usually senior citizens receiving a tax break, to call the assessing office and request a form. This form sometimes shows up as a number or it shows up as a senior tax relief form. These forms don't exist. And it seems like that the scam works by when you can't receive these forms to pay a little bit of money to have these companies fill the form out for you. As soon as we got wind of this, we were able to talk to a few of our neighboring municipalities and put out this flyer to kind of summarize what we're seeing in terms of the scam. As soon as we put out the flyer, we also notified the police department, so if they were receiving calls, they could either help or forward the individuals to the assessing department to clarify what is real and what is not.
How important is it for the West Bloomfield Township to be acting on something like this as soon as possible?
Well, it's crucial. It's crucial as soon as possible. It's like I said, we've had about a week of calls, and that was enough to realize that if we're getting a few calls, there are hundreds of individuals that are not receiving, a heads up that these are out there. We're looking to reach those individuals as well and spread the word. We're in this together, and we're just trying to, we're just trying to make this a safer community and a safer world. They are getting very sophisticated. These scams are getting more and more sophisticated to the point where your personal information is sometimes attached to them. The best way is to call your assessing department and to verify if any of this is true. I recommend to call the assessing department. Our number is 248-451-4850, and we would love to hear from you and discuss what you are seeing in terms of these possible scams. And we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Financial and tax scams are becoming harder and harder to identify with every passing year. It's important that everybody has the correct information, the correct forms, and that they know to ask the right questions if something doesn't look right. For Civic Center TV, I'm Jake Schaff.
Appreciate the report, Jake. It's important to keep up to date on those documents and to make sure that the information you're receiving is in fact from that source. We know through many stories that we've done in the past here at Civic Center TV and from warnings from local police departments, the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, most recently with this story, West Bloomfield Township itself, that scam artists will often spoof those communications. Heck, West Bloomfield Township hasn't been a stranger to these scam attempts either. Still, the Zoning Board of Appeals, the Planning Commission, even the Environmental Commission warning applicants that come in for permits and see the boards and commissions that they may be then contacted by scam artists who are pretending to be the township asking for money after the fact, which is also not something that's being practiced by the township. So good advice there from Rob Scripture, and as always, if it seems suspicious, hang up the phone, call the township directly from wbtownship.org, ask the department directly through the township's initial contact means if what they said to you is what they're actually saying or if it's somebody else doing that instead. And if that's the case, go into your local police department, call their non-emergency number, file a police report. It at least puts that information out there so the local law enforcement can help your neighbors prevent themselves falling victim to those scams. We're just a little under a week away from football season getting underway in Michigan. The MHSAA kicking off its season. High school football is back, and it all began this week. Week 0, week -1, whatever you want to call it. The end of the preseason as West Bloomfield hosted not one but two local opponents for a scrimmage. Harper Woods and Brother Rice out at the Swamp on Thursday evening. I had a chance to speak to Coach Hilbers about what this scrimmage does for teams like West Bloomfield as they face competition in the final days before those games count.
Well, I think when you play teams like to the caliber that we saw today, they're going to show you your deficiencies a little bit, and I like that. Like I like being challenged to kind of find out what we are and what we got to get better at, and we got a decent idea of that, and we'll get a better idea when we watch the film about stuff that we got to fix in the next week.
Because you get all this time with your team, you lock in where you're in West Bloomfield High School for a full week, getting to know the team. Teams getting to build that chemistry, practicing day in and day out. But it's a lot different when you go up against different competition. So after you see what you saw today, what are some things that you're looking toward these final 7 days, 8 days before you guys go on the road to Dearborn?
I would just say consistency, because when we were at our best, we looked like we competed for spurts, but that doesn't cut it when you play teams that are really good. You have to do that, for 4 quarters, and not to say you're not going to make mistakes. It's going to happen, but if we were more consistent, really from the start, I would have been a little bit happier. But at least we know now what we got to work on.
Pre-game and after the scrimmage, seeing a lot of passion from Jackson Carver, from Tristan Hunter, from so many others that are seniors and juniors, returning varsity players. What does that mean to you and your coaches to see that coming in a game that doesn't count on the record, but can have a big impact in the weeks ahead?
Well, they know the finality of it all. You know what I mean? Obviously, the season hasn't started yet, but they know that their backs are kind of up against it and their time's running out, and I think they're acting accordingly. They're taking charge of the team and laying out the expectations that it takes to get done what you need to. So, they've done a pretty good job. We had a great senior class last year with great leadership, and there was a big void, and they've done a really good job, those guys and the rest of them, of kind of stepping up to that role.
Returning 5 starters on offense, 6 on the defensive side for the Lakers in 2026. You and I talked about this previously. Coming into this season, what you're wanting to see is a lot of these younger guys that you think have a ton of potential that could step up and be impressive this season, all across all 3 phases. How satisfied with you with their performance tonight against teams that have had their rush of success in years past as well?
The younger guys, that is? Some good. I'm sure there were some mistakes out there too, but I saw enough flashes where it's like, we might have what we think we have. But just like with the team in general, especially for younger guys, it really is about learning how to be consistent and not get too high when you have a couple good plays or too low if you make a couple mistakes, and just staying level-headed and doing your job.
Last few days before the season, what are those final adjustments that you make, those final days? How does that look for the West Bloomfield Lakers as you get ready to go on the road week 1, next week Friday against Dearborn Fordson?
Yeah, it's definitely a balance, because we have to look inward first and fix the stuff that we're not doing good enough and get to the levels that we need to be at. But then you also have to turn your attention to your opponent and actually game plan, which we don't do a ton for in the scrimmage. We just make sure we run all our coverages. Are we making mistakes? We're going to line up in all our formations. Can we get in and out of them? We don't, specifically game plan for our opponents like you would in the regular season. So we look inward first, and then after get to Monday, we're going to start looking across down the road at Fordson.
Coach, your lasting message for the team coming out of tonight, and your lasting message for them as we're just a few days out from the beginning of this season?
Just be at your best every play. Football's a blessing. You don't get it for that long. It's one of those games. I can go play golf right now. I can play pickup basketball. I don't get to go play football. When it's over, it's over. So enjoy it and take advantage of the opportunities you have.
Road opens next week on the road in Dearborn. Dearborn Fordson first on the docket before the Lakers come home in week number 2 to play Troy. Coach, thank you so much.
You got it. Thanks.
You mean to tell me you can't play full contact golf, full contact basketball, lay some guy? What happened to the bad boys, Coach? You can go ahead and play that way out in the park, out at the gym. That's a way to play competitively. Come on, it doesn't have to be football. West Bloomfield football begins on Friday, August 28th on the road at Dearborn Fordson, 7 p.m. kickoff. They return to the Swamp for their first of just 4 home games in 2026 on September 3rd. That's a Thursday game, just leading into Labor Day weekend. We'll have coverage throughout the season. See the Lakers updates, learn more about the team, see how they're doing, civiccentertv.com/LakersSports will be the home for all that information and information on where you may be able to see our broadcasts throughout the season as they come and go. Congratulations to the Lakers on completing their preseason training and all those teams getting ready in those final days. It was a great showing at the high school. Harper Woods looked really impressive. Brother Rice's defense, especially off the edges, was on fire, slicing and dicing all evening. And as Coach Hilber said, when West Bloomfield looked really good, they looked excellent. But the consistency, definitely a question mark as we head into these final days before the regular season. Close to home, a foreclosure prevention webinar is aimed at helping those that are struggling with their home payments to make sure they stay in their home, all courtesy of Gesher Human Services. Joining us is one of their financial education managers, Lalcha Cunningham, on The Splash. Lalcha, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Tyler.
Happy to have you on because there's so many different pressures that come with being a homeowner, and then you have the financial side that comes into play too. And when you get to a point where you're facing foreclosure, that's about the tightest pressure you can feel as a homeowner. So how is Gesher Human Services jumping in to help those that may be in a financially tough situation?
Yes, well, we have noticed that there's been a huge increase in foreclosure and mortgage default class calls, and so we wanted to create some classes to really help our clients and our participants kind of navigate through this very difficult road. And so we created this workshop coming September 1st, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to really provide them a lot of tools, tips, and resources to help them, again, navigate through this process. And our ultimate goal is to help homeowners to be able to stay in their homes.
The conventional thought would be that you reach out for this help from Gesher Human Services, from another organization, from somebody that you trust with financial advice as you're starting to go through the foreclosure process, or as you're on the doorstep. What is the right time to reach out for help if you're feeling those pressures start to affect your ability to pay your home payment?
Yeah, I always say the first time to reach out is that moment when you are uncertain if you're going to be able to make that payment, Tyler, because that way when you're in the space where you're concerned about if you're going to be able to make the payment, at that point you still have a lot of options. Sometimes what happens is participants and clients and homeowners, they wait to the last minute or wait till they've missed several payments to start making those calls. But the very first time that you are uncertain if you are able to make that payment, you should be on the phone with your lender at that point, or reaching out to a housing counseling agency such as Gesher to help you work with the lenders as well.
There are reports showing that there's been just under an 11% increase in foreclosures during the first quarter of 2026 as opposed to the final quarter of fiscal year 2025. Lalcha, how will a program like this webinar on September 1st at 1 p.m. through Gesher Human Services help those that may be facing foreclosure begin that process of getting themselves out of that situation?
So during the workshop, they're going to find out exactly what they need to do to start that process. Again, as I stated, it's very important to just do it right, immediately when you feel like you can't, pay that first mortgage bill. And we're going to talk to them about the things that they need to work with their lenders on, the documentation that they'll need, and also to learning how to create effective budgeting so that they can, obviously navigate, the rising costs. Because one of the reasons a lot of homeowners are starting to face foreclosures is because they're experiencing so many rising costs elsewhere. And so we're going to talk about that. Again, we're going to go through what the resources are. We're going to talk about what that foreclosure timeline looks like. We're going to talk about when it's a mortgage default, and just really helping them to be more proactive. Sometimes in these spaces, families are a little bit reactive versus proactive, and we want to make sure that they're being proactive so that they can get all the options to be able to stay in their home.
It's a tough scenario to be in because you have so much pride in being able to maintain your household and being able to keep your family in that situation. Some people just struggle to make that step and say, hey, I need help in this scenario, and so many others that revolve around those necessities in life. So from your perspective, being an expert, seeing and knowing the stories of these situations that people in our community and here in West Bloomfield, in greater West Bloomfield, and throughout Oakland County go through. When you start to get behind on your mortgage payments, how quickly do you often see that scenario snowball into what ends up being down the road a foreclosure?
It can go very quickly if you're not being proactive, if you're not working with the lenders. You know, again, we always encourage our homeowners to read all the documentation that the mortgage company is sending. Again, stay in communication with them. It's so important that you're in communication with your lender every step of the way. And even when they're reaching out to us and we're working with them, making sure that they're, again, responding to the letters, responding to any phone calls that may be coming through from the lenders. So, again, just staying in major communication that's going to help you with that process. But it can go very quickly, again, if you are ignoring that communication. So I can't even stress enough is to make sure that you're responding to those phone calls. If you have questions, making sure you're reaching out to the lender and responding to, you know, deadlines and notifications that the lender may be sending out during this process. And again, staying really close in contact with a housing counselor is always going to be really, really helpful. Because again, they can maybe help them understand some of that documentation that may not be familiar to them. If there's a situation where there are researching to get a loss mitigation or some type of special forbearance plan, and they're not understanding that information, we at Gesher and other housing counseling agencies as well can really help them with that paperwork, because sometimes the paperwork itself is a little bit challenging from some of the home buyers. So again, the key thing is, and I don't want to be redundant here, but the key thing is to really make sure that they're in communication with their lenders.
Yeah, it's never redundant. It's important information because you want to drive the point across that there are resources available in the community if you're facing this situation, because not every foreclosure, not every mortgage default, not even just being behind on your mortgage payment or even your rent or whatever the case may be for your housing, not every one of those situations looks alike. For more information on this seminar, September 1st, 1 p.m. It is a webinar online via Zoom. You can find more information, GesherMI.org. Under their new news and events section on their website will be a link to register to attend this webinar. Again, September 1st, 1 p.m., GesherMI.org. Joining us on the Splash Live, Lalcha Cunningham, Financial Education Manager with Gesher Human Services. Given, Lalcha, that there are so many different scenarios people may be in when they're facing foreclosure or they're nearing foreclosure, what options are available either just generally or here specifically in our area of Michigan for those that are in these tough situations?
Yeah, so there is help, Tyler, and I love that you said that every situation is going to be different. But again, is reaching out to that lender is going to be key. But some of the options that may be available is a what we call a special forbearance, where there's a reduced payment for 3 months while they work on possibly getting you a permanent loan modification. And that's typically what a lot of home buyers may qualify, but it's also going to depend on whether you have an FHA loan or a conventional loan. So again, you want to reach out to that lender to see what your particular options are for your particular loan. That's going to be key. And again, once you talk to them, and if they do give you a special forbearance for 90 days, making sure that you make those payments on time, because that's going to say to them that you're serious about it, and again, that you are wanting to stay in the home, and it's going to show your commitment as well. But again, it's going to be a little bit different for everyone based upon their particular loan. But again, if you read through the documentation, when you call and say that you are possibly struggling to make those payments, they're going to start sending you a couple different options. And so again, making sure that you're taking a deep dive into the different options and making sure, you know, you're picking the one that's going to work for you and your family.
And we recently talked to West Bloomfield Township's assessor about property tax scams. The unfortunate reality is when people are facing foreclosure, they also, in some scenarios, become targets of scammers across the community looking to take advantage of their situation, to steal their information, which will dive them even deeper into a tough financial situation. What are some of those red flags that people should look out for when they're trying to find some of those resources that may be available to them or are being advertised as available to them to prevent foreclosure of their home?
Yeah, so the biggest thing I'll say when it comes to some of the fraudulent scams, whether it's, through some of these, investor companies that send those letters out, I always say if it sounds too good to be true, then it probably is. And what a lot of the letters that are coming that are fraudulent, what they're promising to do typically doesn't get done. The best way is to ignore all of those letters, all of that correspondence that's coming, and really just work with the lender. That way, everything is 100% true, and you know exactly what options are available, and what programs they have for you. Again, the biggest thing is if it's too good to be true, it probably is. And a lot of times they're not really able to do much more than you can do. Sometimes there's companies who want to try to work on your behalf, but really, Tyler, all that stuff can be done by you for free, and then working with a housing counseling agency such as Gesher to kind of help you navigate that. But if they're getting letters in the mail, it doesn't hurt to reach out to, again, a housing counseling agency to call and look at the letters. But again, most of them, as you mentioned, are fraudulent scams, and just work with your lender. Yeah.
Lastly, Lulcha, as those that go through this webinar, those who have had the help and consultation of Gesher Human Services locally to get through their foreclosure situation, when they do get on the other side of it or near the other side of it, what help then is available for maybe budgeting or for keeping abreast of their mortgage situation so that this doesn't snowball into a foreclosure again in the future?
Yes, and thank you for mentioning that, because it's very important. And so during the workshop, we're going to talk about that. Once you get back on track and once those payments get current, we're going to talk about how to navigate that budget, whether it means reducing some costs elsewhere, again, reworking the budget, and being a little bit more savvy maybe the next time around when it comes to spending, and also to making sure that you're making that payment a priority. I know sometimes it gets a little bit difficult to navigate, everything on your budget, especially with a lot of rising costs, gas and, food. Sometimes it becomes a struggle, for, homeowners. But remember, your basic needs, which is your four walls, which is your housing, transportation, your food, and utilities, are always going to be your top priority. And so making sure that you remember that. But then coming to Gesher, as you mentioned, we offer a lot of different services. We can work with them on their budget and really help them navigate, that spending, so that they're able to, make those new payments on time.
The webinar, 1 p.m. on September 1st through Gesher Human Services. You can get more information on this and other services through Gesher and register for this online webinar on geshermi.org. Lulcha, thank you so much for your time.
Tyler, thank you so much for having me. We appreciate it.
Glad to have you on. Financial Education Manager Lulcha Cunningham from Gesher Human Services. A very important webinar for those that may be facing some trouble paying their mortgage or possibly facing foreclosure, maybe even already in the foreclosure process. There is help available. You can work your way through that and possibly be able to stay in your home, or at the very least, save your financial situation in the process. One more time, register for that, geshermi.org, September 1st, 1 p.m. Under their news and events section on their website, you'll find their full calendar. You click on the event. There'll be an easy link to click and register so you can attend and learn more, or just contact them at geshermi.org for more information and assistance. Coming to the Berman Center for the Performing Arts, one of the most iconic actors in American history, in film, on the stage, and in music, Judy Garland, going to be the focus of a performance at the Berman Center for the Performing Arts. Get Happy, Angela Ingersoll sings. Judy Garland is coming on Sunday, August 30th to the Berman Center for the Performing Arts on the campus of the J Detroit. Joining us for a preview is the lady herself, Angela Ingersoll, singer and actress, who will be featuring the works of Judy Garland. Angela, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled. I'm here from Chicago, and it'll be my first time in the Detroit area, so I'm really excited to meet you all.
Well, we won't hold Chicago against you as you come into Detroit. Very welcoming, as is Chicago. That Midwest nice always applies in cities like Detroit and the metro area. But you're coming out here to celebrate Judy Garland in particular with this performance. What drew you first to the work of Judy Garland?
I think it's the same story for nearly every person in America and many throughout the world. It's the Wizard of Oz, isn't it? We all fall in love with her or identify with her in some way when we're children. So many of us have that in common. And we get to carry the symbols of that story throughout our culture and throughout our lives. So I think many, many, many people from many walks of life are Judy fans like me, deep down inside. Now, I was a singer since a very, very young age. I started when I was 5. I'm of the Annie generation, and so I was always told that I had a likeness to Judy Garland. I'm also like her, 5 feet tall. I'm very loud. She and I have the same crooked teeth, actually, though she wears caps on her teeth in her beautiful MGM films. If you're familiar with some of her later concert work or television show, you might see her distinctive smile. So a lot of physical likeness that I was born with seems to make my singing instrument perhaps come out in a way that also creates a lot of similarity. There's always been a likeness there my whole life.
And there's a complicated story, too, to Judy's journey throughout her life, not only her work in Hollywood and on the stage, but certainly in her personal life. How did you build your connection to her to not only tell the story through her music, but also capture her own complicated personality that is so core to the work that she did that became iconic in American pop culture?
That is so beautifully said. You know, she really brought her soul to her work and bared her soul as an artist for us throughout her life. You know, she was the very first childhood superstar that the American movie system created. And we followed her throughout her life, which was shorter than many of us would have wished it was. And I found that she gives so much through her work, obviously, but also the way her love and vulnerability is reflected in her fans throughout the world. So I grew up with an uncle who showed me a lot of the movies when I was a kid and gave me some of the records, and you know, my grandparents, of course, you know, loved her as well. The reflections of the bits of her and other people, I think, were interesting to me to shine a light on how diverse she is. You know, I see lots of different kinds of people at her shows. And the heartache that Judy is also known for is not exclusive to Judy. You know, so many of us share our own very private heartaches that for her were made quite public. And so I think a lot of people feel a communion with her, a need to protect her. And so dealing with the people I love in my own family growing up who struggled with some of the things she struggled with emotionally, mentally, addiction issues as well. My learning to love those people, wanting to make those people happy, wanting to make those people laugh, because they were the closest in my life. I think that's a lot of what I bring to the storytelling in this show. And thank you for underlining that it's not just all of the great songs. There's a lot of really heartfelt storytelling that goes on as well. And hopefully a lot of laughter. You know, she was so incredibly funny. She wasn't just this sad character. She was a very witty raconteur. You know, she was sometimes the smartest person in the room, quite honestly. She was a great wit as well as a great artist. Always, I say, equal parts chanteuse and clown. So there's a lot of that good old vaudeville style to my show. You know, I have this dressing screen on stage, and I go behind a dressing screen while I talk to people, and I'm covered with just my little head sticking out, and I change my clothes on stage in front of the audience, but behind my screen, and come out in a new costume. You know, she used to do that kind of thing on her TV show where I have this big skirt here, where she would be, you know, behind her curtain and then reveal herself in a new costume. So I do a lot of silly vaudevillian things like that I learned from her.
And there's so much that goes into a performance like that because you're, of course, incorporating all of her music. You're trying to capture the essence of her performative style while, as we just mentioned, all the storytelling elements that go into telling the story of Judy Garland. What's always interesting to me talking to actors is when I talk to those that are both actors and singers, and they always have that kind of back and forth where sometimes I identify as more of a singer, sometimes I identify as more of an actor. It's two very different styles of storytelling. So how do you blend that together to be able to tell Judy's story in this way on the stage?
I do think I'm an actor first. Telling the truth is more important than being lovely, in my opinion. So I will sacrifice the most beautiful sounding note for the most truthful sounding note. And Judy was the same way in her live performances, certainly. I'm surrounded with extraordinary musicians who make me a better musician every single time I play with them. This show was filmed for PBS a few years ago, and some of my PBS musicians will be with me, as well as I'm joining some local musicians. Everywhere I go, I pick up some local players. So it's a combination of local folks from your area, as well as some of my Chicago musicians as well, who are some of the best musicians in the world, in my opinion. And so the musicians certainly give me a lot of power to soar upon. And the music, it's such wonderful music, the writing, the great American songbook writers, the George and Ira Gershwin and of course Harold Arlen. We do practically all his songs all night long, and Irving Berlin. This great part of our heritage is something that's important to keep breathing fresh air into. I don't want our culture to be disposable. These things that we share pop music, the great American songbook. And it's wonderful coming together and just seeing people from different walks of life be in the same place together live and enjoy this music and let it inform them. And whether you know every single song or not, you're sharing something that belongs to all of us, and we can be part of something together. And nowadays we feel fragmented in our entertainment and in our messaging and being online all of the time. So it's wonderful to just come together, and the musicians make me a better musician, and the audience makes me a better storyteller. Listening to them and their reactions and their laughter and their reflections, that's what really keeps me telling the truth, and making sure that I'm not just performing at them, but letting them help tell me what the story is. And I love meeting audiences afterwards. I do meet and greets afterwards, and people have such beautiful stories. I love to hug them and shake their hand and take a picture. And they, will bring, it's grandma's 100th birthday, and she's here with her great grandchildren, because Judy reaches so many people and generations. It's something we can share, and that's so beautiful. And you spoke of great singing actors. My friend Eric Gutman is the one who actually introduced me to here. He's a wonderful singing actor in your area who recently did our Neil Diamond show there. My husband and I produced that show, and he's so extraordinary in it. I wrote it, my husband Michael. We have this company called Artist Lounge Live, and we do shows around the country. So I wish Eric could join me for a duet that day, but he's a wonderful actor, so of course he's cast. He's away doing a play as well. So I can't wait to meet his friends. He said you guys are really cool.
Well, you can join Angela on the stage at the Berman Center for the Performing Arts. Get happy. Angela Ingersoll sings Judy Garland, 4 p.m. on Sunday, August 30th at the Berman Center for the Performing Arts on the campus of the J Detroit. More information and ticket sales already open right now, theberman.org. Angela, you mentioned that interactivity with the audience that you tend to have after the show, but that was also a huge element of what Judy Garland did on the stage and on her TV show as well, interacting with the audience right there. How do you play that into the show itself as you are diving into character as Judy Garland?
Oh, it helps me have fun, I don't go out there in a wig and a posture and fake it and say, hello, I'm Judy Garland tonight. I do portray her in plays sometimes around the country. I've done this play called End of the Rainbow many times in Los Angeles and Chicago and St. Louis, but this is something a little different. I come out and say, hello, I'm Angela Ingersoll, and like you, I'm a great fan of Judy Garland. So I'm telling the stories real time, with the people, not trying to fool them that I'm someone else. And then when we go into the music, there is a kind of channeling that happens. I learned to sing by singing along with Judy's records. So to me, that's just what singing was, And so when I sing, and I've got this instrument has some similarities, I hold her in my mind's eye, and it just comes out. It just flows out of me, and feeling the joy in the audience when they get that aha moment of, oh my gosh, it's almost like Judy's in the room. We're feeding each other this energy of they know I'm not trying to fool them. Some people are impersonator illusionists, and that's a cool gig too. I wouldn't say that that's how I think of what I do. I'm a storyteller and an actor who channels this icon because I believe I'm her artistic descendant. I am because she was. And so my performance is based in gratitude more than a gimmick.
Angela Ingersoll is with us. Her performance of Get Happy as she sings Judy Garland's music on the stage at the Berman Center for the Performing Arts, Sunday, August 30th. Showtime is 4 p.m. Tickets available on theberman.org. You talked about interacting with the audience and people that love the work of Judy Garland, the story, the life of Judy Garland. You've had a pretty interesting ability to do that in a personal way with her family, connecting with her son Joey over the years as you've been performing that. How has that helped you improve this performance, and what does it mean to you to have the kind of reaction, the strong reaction, the positive reaction you've had from Judy Garland's descendants?
That's a very warm and magnificent feeling to have that real life connection and feel heard and seen and accepted that way, that the work I'm doing is respectful and honest and breathing fresh air and positivity. I'm not here to tear down or take from anyone's legacy, only to make sure that we keep appreciating the greatness instead of putting her on a shelf and letting her legacy get dusty. I hope that breathing my fresh air in is a respectful thing. And I did have the opportunity when I started getting to work with Joey. It was just life-changing and beautiful. I tell a story about this in my show. We got together for a Mother's Day concert. That was our initial idea, was we're going to do a concert for Mama in Chicago. So Joey traveled from Los Angeles to my home in Chicago so we could work on our scripts together. And we, had a home-cooked meal. My husband is a very, very good cook. Home-cooked meal around my great-grandmother's table, who certainly, in the 40s was listening to Judy's records sit right at that table. And, my cats sat on his lap and he cleaned his plate. And we had a bit of family time where I could really listen and take in heart, the beating heart behind this very real, iconic person. It really humanizes the whole story, and there's a sense of responsibility in loving the human legacy of it all, and the humans still, connected to her. So it's something that I feel very tender about and very grateful for. He then brought all kinds of memorabilia, to our show that I got to see. Things like her honorary Oscar statuette. She got like a child junior version. He let me hold. Wow. Things like that. I've been able to try on gloves of hers and things like that. It's one of the most special moments of my life. He sang along with me. Wow. Quite a lot in our show. He's not a singer and performer like his wonderful sisters Lorna and Liza. They're more the performers, but he has such great short stories to tell and memorabilia, and so I interviewed him on stage, and oh my gosh, just hearing him sing along with me, that is the most mind-blowing experience of my life. It just, that's the real, we're breathing real air together. That it makes me feel so connected. It makes me feel less alone. And if I can share that magic with people and let them feel less alone, isn't that what it's about? That's why we want to sing songs together that we all know the words to, and we can all feel less alone, and that's what it's all about.
That's why we make art. Angela, before we go, we have everyone's got such a complicated life. There's also complex. We all have our own intricacies that go into our story, and so much of what art tells us, what a performance can inform us, is how we can better make the world around us pleasant. What do you believe the people in the audience on Sunday, August 30th at 4 p.m. can learn from the story of Judy Garland?
Make someone happy. Make just one person happy. This is a song that I choose to sing in the show, and make someone happy, and you will be happy too. Just taking the time to listen to someone, let them feel heard, let them feel seen, make them laugh. It's the simple little connections that we make that are of the greatest value. And I think a lot of folks feel that maybe those connections are becoming, not maybe, let's say, I think many of us feel they are being obscured. I'm trying to find kind language to say, why do people bump into me at the grocery store? It's like no one can see past their own nose anymore. It's like, let's see one another again. Let's hear one another again. And only live performance can do that. So I hope that people feel super heartwarmed about, I know there's a lot of friction and, I got to figure out where to park and blah, 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 blah. But it means so much to come together as a community, and listen together, feel seen and heard, like we can be known somewhere. And I hope that people feel like they want to support more live music in their community after seeing this, and that they just want to remember to see one another, and therefore they'll feel seen in return.
A wonderful story and a wonderful performance, an Emmy-nominated performance that's been featured on PBS and has been on stage all throughout the nation. Angela Ingersoll, thank you so much for coming on the show today to preview Get Happy.
Thank you so much. We're going to stay all night and sing them all.
Very nice. That'll be a fun day at the Berman Center for the Performing Arts. Get Happy, as Angela Ingersoll sings the music of Judy Garland. It comes on stage at the Berman Sunday, August 30th, 4 p.m. Tickets are on sale. I'm looking at it. They're starting to go thin in that theater at the Berman Center. So get your tickets now on theberman.org or visit thejddetroit.org for more information on services at the Berman as well. Close to home, the big news recently for one neighborhood that's been banding together to preserve its history for years to come. Zock's Cass Lake Village is now simply Cass Lake Village following the results of the 2026 August primary election. After the result came through that next day, I had a chance to speak to Chris LeDuc, one of the many people in that community that led the charge to them becoming their very own village. Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Sure do appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to have you on to talk about this. Congratulations. This has been a massive effort between yourself and so many of your neighbors in the Cass Lakeside subdivision over the recent years to become a village, because what people may not understand, this is an historic community, a long-lasting community, one of many here in Greater West Bloomfield.
That's correct. Yeah, our community was developed around 1918, and it was developed as a resort community. So, I'm sure at the time it seemed like a great idea to install, we have these roughly 3 miles of canals throughout our community. And we also have 15 vehicular bridges. So we probably have more vehicular bridges that are supported by our 238 homes than in the rest of West Bloomfield. So after 100 years of wear and tear on these bridges, they've now accrued an infrastructure deficit. So we as a community have had to get together and figure out how are we going to resolve this. We also have a a private water system that services our 238 homes, roughly 600 people. And that also was put in around 1918. So that is also a little over 100 years old. And so as a small community with sort of these heavy infrastructure burdens, it was left to us to figure out how best to solve these problems. And we worked with local stakeholders, including West Bloomfield Township, our elected representatives, Noah Arbit, Rosemary Bear, and Congresswoman Haley Stevens. And as we brainstormed ways that we could address this issue, the thing that made the most sense was to organize as a municipality.
And it's a pretty emphatic need when 90% of the voters in your community say yes on that proposal. 247 voters from this community voting on the village charter, 217 of those voting yes to ratify that charter. Now, this is also a really unique situation, Chris, because while the Cass Lakeside Village has now passed its charter, it's officially got its rules and regulations for that village, it still isn't part of West Bloomfield Township and does have access to many of the resources from the township proper. How does that dynamic work?
So I will say that the difference between Sylvan Lake, Orchard Lake, and we are Cass Lake Village. That is the name of the new municipality that we adopted yesterday. The difference is that Orchard Lake Village is a city, Kego is a city, Sylvan is a city, West Bloomfield's a township, but we're a village. So we actually continue to be within the township. We are part and parcel of the township. We have just reorganized our government from a community association to a village, but we continue to pay township taxes. We continue to vote for township officials. We continue to be represented by the township board. It's just the biggest difference, a couple differences. One is that in the past we had a flat HOA fee or like a flat tax. So whether your home was worth $250,000 or $2.5 million, we all paid the same amount. Now as a municipality, it's a progressive property tax, so it'll be based on your taxable value. And then, we are required to follow all the same procedures as other governmental groups within our other municipalities within our area. So things like Freedom of Information Act, transparency, record keeping, all of that. But what we did find is that when we went out and we looked for infrastructure funding, all of that funding assumed that you were a municipality, because there aren't many other community associations that manage 5 miles of roads, 5 miles of 4-inch water mains, 15 vehicular bridges, and 3 miles of canals that people can use. And so, what we found is when we went to go look just for loans, just for low-priced infrastructure loans, that we didn't meet those requirements because we weren't a municipality. So that's what led us here, but we continue to be part of the township. Again, we continue to pay township taxes, unlike Sylvan or Orchard Lake, where they get 100% of their residents' tax revenue. Our village millage will be on top of the township taxes.
And this is pretty historic too, because the last incorporated village in Michigan, 27 years ago. The last village in Oakland County, 60 years ago. This is an historic moment for your community, and that's all well and great, but the most important part about this, Chris, is that, as you have mentioned multiple times, having access to those resources to help your infrastructure in your community. Given that this has now gone official and you now will have access to those resources should Cass Lake Village pursue them, how much of a huge help will this be to your community?
I mean, it's amazing because we, as a society, we organize infrastructure funding from the top down, right? It starts at federal, and then it goes to the states, and then it goes to the local community. Just our water system alone, we had the county quote replacing the water system for us so that we could leverage their bond. And they quoted us $15 million to replace our water mains. And so it's overwhelming. And again, we're only 238 homes, and none of us were around in 1918 when the community was developed, and none of us, a lot of us weren't around during this sort of accrual period where this deficit accrued over time. But we are a bunch of people who came together and understood it's going to cost money to fix this. But as you saw with the overwhelming response, I think because we already maintain a lot of our own infrastructure, here at Cass Lake Village, we do have that sense of community and coming together that's sort of unique and gives us part of our character. But certainly, a $25-30 million deficit is a lot for 238 homes to carry. So, in Michigan, we have things like the drinking water revolving fund, right? Which is basically an infrastructure bank. They make low-cost loans to municipalities, where we would pay that money back over time. We're actually on their priority list in order to help us replace our water system. But the Treasury Department couldn't write us a check because, again, we weren't a municipality. So because we couldn't get bonding, we couldn't even borrow money. So, this will certainly help us tap into some of those low-price loans so that as we're taking on these large projects, we have the same access to resources that other communities do in Michigan.
Chris LeDuc is an HOA member of Cass Lakeside, was the chair of their village committee, and is a resident of what is now known as Cass Lake Village right here in the greater West Bloomfield community, with their village charter passing by 90% affirmative vote in the August primary here in the state of Michigan. Chris, you had mentioned it earlier on. This was a long process. It's a daunting process, and it was taken on by residents of the community like you, not by government leaders, not by those with experience in making this all happen. So when you mentioned the support of local and state representation and helping this process move along, what does that mean to your community in Cass Lake Village?
So, I would say that these are other people who are experts, right? And they have visibility at what all the options are. So I think that the most support, there were a few things. One, that came out, all three of the representatives that I mentioned, as well as representatives from the township, all came out and did community meetings to help, kind of validate that this is something that made sense for us. But as much as anything, since they see all the resources, they said, this is your best move forward. Nobody was necessarily pro-village, just being candid, because it's a heavy lift, like organizing a new municipality. It has, as you said, it hasn't been done in a long time. So we don't have zoning ordinances. We don't have a planning commission. And again, this is all volunteer driven. So it's a heavy lift. And so before we made that lift, having these experts come in and really roll up their sleeves and spend a lot of time with us and say, and explore all the other possibilities and validate both to our leadership and to the community, this is our best bet. That was incredibly helpful.
And how will these resources ultimately help you not only provide what you need, the updates that are vital to Cass Lake Village, but also to maintain the identity that's had for over 100 years, that so-called Little Venice that it is here in greater West Bloomfield?
Yeah, that's correct. And, it's people are like, thanks for all the time and effort, because it's been a 4-year process. This is the culmination of a 4-year process. But I'm just grateful that I live in a community where they're willing to try new things and they're willing to get together and come together and work together. And as you see, it passed by an overwhelming number, but that's a result of us sitting in a lot of rooms and making space for everybody's ideas and making sure that everybody's heard. And then we all get together and we vote. And so, I'm just grateful that we all decided to come together and try this crazy experiment, because even when we were talking to like the Attorney General's office about organizing and the State Boundary Commission, and we were looking at the processes, most of the people that were involved the last time this happened weren't in government or with us any longer. And so again, having sort of that support from those officials at helping us navigate through the process has been invaluable.
And a pretty cool moment for everybody in our local area, especially for those in Cass Lake Village. It's not often you're able to make history while also directly helping the very people you live amongst. Chris, before we let you go, now that Cass Lake Village is officially Cass Lake Village, what are the next steps for your community there?
Well, now the work begins. And so, as I said, we don't have zoning ordinances. People are like, if somebody wanted to add on to their house tomorrow, we don't have any way to tell them if it's okay or not. So the first thing we need to do is set a moratorium on any building projects. We need to have an intergovernmental agreement with the building department or hire building officials to come in. So it's a pretty heavy lift. And I think that we're all pretty aware of what that is. But fortunately, we have a wealth of talent here in our village and a spirit of togetherness and that, many hands make light work. So the next steps, we have a long task list. But I'm encouraged by everybody's willingness to step up and take on a little piece of it, and see over the next 2 years. The first term for all village council members is 2 years, and so one of the residents asked on our Facebook group, what do you see in 2 years? And I want to see transparency, I want to see civic engagement, and I want to see us stand up a functioning sort of normal government, because it is sort of a unique experiment. So that's what I'd like to see. Those are the next steps.
Oh, before you can do the work of a village, you got to be a village. And that's exactly what Cass Lake Village did in the August primary. Chris, before we let you go, anything else, your lasting message to the community as you've surpassed this big milestone for your village?
Well, Cass Lake Village is around 109 years old, and so I hope that this puts us on the best footing for the next 109 years, and that in the next 100 years, people will look back and say, this was when we made history as a village in Michigan, and I think it'll be a source of pride for all of us. So I'm just very proud of our community.
Well, congratulations to you, to all that were involved in this multi-year process to be able to turn your 238 home, roughly 600 person population in Cass Lake Village into just that, a brand new village. Chris, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And congratulations to all of those in Cass Lake Village for this historic moment in our community, turning our 4 communities into 5 as a brand new village becomes part of our community right in the middle of West Bloomfield Township. That's our show. I want to remind you that television that's close to home is always online on civiccentertv.com, including today's episode and all of its segments on demand. So if you couldn't tune in for the full hour, there you go. It's always online on civiccentertv.com. In addition, those short little bites of each of these segments will be available across our social media, Facebook at Civic Center TV 15, and find us everywhere else at Civic Center TV. Big thank you to our crew, Jake Schaff and Jonathan Montgomery out in the field. Jonathan with Calvin Brown at Master Control today in our studio at Civic Center TV. For our entire team, I'm Tyler Kieft. Thanks for tuning in to The Splash Live.